and I noticed I was missing calls from Candus. Before I even had a chance to call her, she messaged me again on Facebook Messenger, and she was just in a panic mode. And she says, "Summer's gone, we can't find her anywhere, the police are here searching." And I said, "I'll be right there."
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, we're going to look at a surprising development, the fact that Summer's Sabbath School teacher, Robin Lane, was actually at Ben Hill Road on June the 15th. I think she arrived at around about 9 o'clock. She was actually called to this scene by Summer's mother, Candus. And what is quite interesting, you heard it in the clip, how many times Candus called Robin in order to, get her there. She was certainly paying trying very hard to get her there. And what does that mean? Some of you may also be aware that on Friday, Candus and Robin appeared in a Fun Fest parade in Kingsport, holding a banner, and the banner had two photos of Summer on it, one with Summer wearing long hair and another with short hair, and the words "Pray for Summer" written on it. One wonders whose idea it was. It was probably Robin's idea. It also seems like it was quite a windy day out there. Before we get to today's episode, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So first of all, thank you to the many of you who dropped in on the live yesterday. There were quite a few people there. It was quite an interesting discussion, I'm sure you'll agree. There were a couple of questions I still want to address, but I think maybe we need to wait a little while because things are quite sensitive at the moment. But it was good to have you guys there. If you haven't watched the live, if you missed it, go and check it out. In terms of this particular information, I kind of have a couple of thoughts. Now, I don't want to, I think there's some people who are suggesting some kind of, sinister aspect with the church. I don't see that at all. I don't see anything in that area. But what I do think is worth mentioning is this idea of, in the middle of a search, this was at 9 o'clock at night, so, it was about, how many hours is that after 6:30? Is it 2.5 hours later? They want to sort of have the Sunday school teacher on the property. And it seems like a strange thing, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem a strange thing? Candus didn't just call her once. You got the idea that she was constantly calling her, constantly trying to get her attention, right? And the intertextual element that I want to highlight here is, in the John Benet Ramsey case, you actually also had the Ramseys calling their pastor. So they called a bunch of friends, some of whom arrived even before the police did. And then you also had the pastor. And this caused kind of a distraction where, the police were trying to manage the scene in terms of the Ramseys. And then there was this sort of hysteria going on with people praying and all the rest. And it was difficult for the police to sort of know what to do and concentrate on looking for John Benet in that particular case. And one wonders whether there's something like that going on here. Why on earth would Robin be summoned to the scene the way that she was? In this particular case, to their credit, the police didn't allow Robin to actually access the Ben Hill Road property. She was sort of lowered down. She was very gung-ho, as you've heard. She was very keen on participating in the search, but ultimately prevented from doing so. But she does say, there was a lot going on. There were helicopters and a lot of police searches going on. Something that did occur to me listening to Robin speaking is she mentions that she was doing something with her own daughter, and it just made me wonder, who were Summer's friends? Who were Summer's little girlfriends? Because we haven't heard about that. And one wonders who they were or who they are, and what they might say about what they knew about Summer as a little person. What were her concerns that she expressed to her little girlfriends, if there were any? And if there weren't any, why not? Where were they? You also get a kind of an extension on the theme that I raised earlier, where I said, there's something unusual going on with Summer, in the sense that she's unusually clingy, and in that sense very different to all the other children. And when you hear Robin talking about Summer, she basically just gave up on trying to discipline her and just let her kind of hang on her while she taught all the other children. And it shows you that something unusual was going on with this 5-year-old. Does that make sense?
Whenever I was helping teach Sabbath school, she was in my lap. And sometimes it was hard to teach because she wanted to be in my lap, holding me and hugging me. I just discovered that it was actually easier for me just to hold her and let her love on me and hug me and teach with her on me than it was to make her sit in a chair.
The other thing that was quite interesting in the Sermon on the Mount, where you heard both of the Wells parents talking about Summer, was the reference to the specific individual, to Robin. So, throughout the whole discussion, which lasted quite a few minutes, the whole Sermon on the Mount lasted around about 12 minutes, which ironically enough is almost the same amount of time as the Chris Watts Sermon on the Porch. But in terms of this particular discussion, I think the only name that is mentioned that is sort of out of the field of reference. In other words, I think the only, besides Robin's name, Rose's name came up, right? But besides that, the only other name mentioned was Robin's. And I remember thinking at the time when Robin was mentioned, obviously at the beginning of the mentioning of her name, thinking, oh, that this is a little friend, this was a little girl, only to find out that her best friend in church was the sort of adult school teacher. And I just found that reference and that whole thing quite odd. And that was also in reference to the parents trying to sketch a portrait of their daughter and not doing it really very well. If you've got to provide kind of an obituary, a kind of a narrative about a person, what did they like, what did they mean to you, and you're sort of struggling to come up with things. Well, they like this movie and this or that. That's kind of a test of your connection to that person, your relationship to that person, your empathy with that person, your custody and care, your level of connection to that person. In any event, let's play the clip where Summer's mother, Candus, talks about Robin.
Our best friend in that church was Robin. She loved her to death.
Yeah, she looked up to women that were...
She come to that church, she went looking for Robin. That was her favorite person.
Any woman that was professional, that
was pretty, beautiful.
She looked up to those kind of women. She, they were, the word I'm looking for, I can't think of it, but she looked up to them.
Another comment that seemed a little bit odd from Donald was referring to his 5-year-old daughter as an awesome young lady.
She's an awesome young lady, and we just want her back.
So coming back to Robin Lane, something that's also quite interesting is, now bear in mind, you've got this sense almost from Candus of being in a panic and being desperate for help kind of thing. But bear in mind how long it took Candus to actually call the authorities, right? And how long it took her to address the media. So one's got to bear in mind the one aspect with, juxtaposed to the other aspect. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is Robin noting that the police couldn't really find any photos of Summer. So, they were sort of in a situation of not knowing, not having something like that. And so it was actually up to Robin to provide the police with that. And one wonders why the parents couldn't have done that.
He showed them some pictures of Summer. The police didn't have very good pictures of her, or some of them hadn't even seen a picture of her yet. In the Madeleine McCann case, you also had a similar situation where the parents didn't provide photos from the actual holiday, so recent photos of Madeleine. Instead, they sort of gave the authorities a photo from something like a year earlier that really didn't look anything like Madeleine. And so once again, you have the impression here of, well, why is it so difficult just to get hold of a photo of Summer? I mean, they're certainly available now, and you can see them all over Facebook, but when the police needed it, why wasn't it available? Why was it so difficult? Why did Robin have to provide it? And so interestingly, although initially Robin was kept away from, I was almost going to say the crime scene, but kept away from the Wells home by the police, they allowed her later on to go and speak to Candus and the boys and sort of be with the family. So you did actually have Robin going up to the home later that same evening. There's really nothing I could do. They just needed someone to pray with them. You feel really helpless in that situation because you want to do something. It makes you feel better to do something. But we couldn't, so we just prayed and we just hugged on them and loved on the boys. And they, of course, were just shattered and just confused, as was I. So what do you guys think? Do you think inviting someone to the scene the way Robin was, do you think that was purposefully meant to kind of run interference, or do you think it was completely innocent? The other thing that Robin says, that she acknowledges, is that there was confusion under these circumstances. Now, bear in mind what's going on. You've got cops on the scene, you've got all of these vehicles, and it's quite a hard to reach area. And then you've also got the family members there, and they're trying to search for Summer, but you've got also these strangers walking around. And so the result in the dark, and it's getting later and later at night, is confusion. How are you related to this family? Who do we actually need to speak to? Who is actually Summer's mom here? Kind of thing. Because if you think about it, Robin sort of looks, she's blonde, and you might, if you didn't know any better, you might mistake her for Summer's mother. So was that a ploy, or was it just the family genuinely needing prayer support kind of thing? And if that's the case, why not ask for the actual pastor to come to the property? So I think it raises certainly some interesting questions, but I'm not going to take it further than that. I will once again put a link to both the school teacher talking about the night the 5-year-old disappeared. I'll put a link to that in the description, as well as the original extended interview. So you guys can listen to that, as well as the reference made to the church folk during their Sermon on the Mount. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.